Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. We're back. Unfortunately, we had to postpone recording last week, so we're a week behind here.
Well, thank goodness nothing interesting happened in anime in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised this doesn't happen more often, because, like, we have such a narrow window of time that we're all available between all of our time zones and
but that's mostly because
and...
of your pathological need to have at least one European on the podcast.
Well, I mean, even when we've done shows with just GLORIO America
Artemis,
here, and the 3 hour difference does
cause problems.
It's a real concern.
So, but hey, we're back now, and yeah, I was kind of disappointed we didn't get to talk last week because, as you said, or were implying with your sarcasm, there's a whole lot of good anime to talk about. If anybody out there thinks we're always hating on anime or we're all cranky old people or something, let it be known that we do like anime when it's good, and it's been pretty good.
The giving has been good this season.
There we go. You've just chased away our final commenter.
Whoa, shit.
All right, well, we got a lot to talk about, so let's introduce everybody. I'm Jel. I am joined by Iro.
I'm not dead yet. I'm still here.
Still with us. Joined by G.
I had a bit and everything planned for the last podcast because it was happening on Mother's Day, and
oh yeah,
we could have done an anime moms bit and everything, but now we can't. It's ruined. I'm just gonna have to save it until next year.
Well, yes, if we're all still here next year, yeah. And for this episode,
Motherhood hasn't been cancelled by then.
Yes, as you heard, we're joined by Aqua.
Hey, finally, the one thing this podcast needed, a white dude talking about anime.
Yes. All right. Well, like we said, a lot of good shows. I feel like my favorite show this season is whatever episode I last watched.
Yeah,
it's a good place to be.
It's a really good place to be.
Yeah.
I am legitimately at I was talking about this with Iro the other week. We're talking about, man, this is a really good season. End of 2021 is going to be interesting. May I remind you all, Beastars was this year.
Yes. Oh, yeah, there were good shows last season, too.
What I mean is that, we were getting so lost in how good this season is.
So tough.
The competition at the end of this year is going to be so fucking white hot that,
Yeah, I was watching Vivy the other day, and I was like, this show's not even going... If we don't watch out, the show's not even gonna crack the top 10 at the end of the year.
I think it'll make the top 10.
Oh, I don't know.
I hope so.
But in lesser seasons, it probably would have been pretty high.
The It-Invaded voting block will make sure Vivy gets into the top 10.
Well, speaking of Vivy,
Brilliant Detective.
I do find it a bit weird how you keep comparing that show to It Invaded and not to Granbelm, because I feel like Granbelm is the much closer competitor.
Oh, I don't know. I think Granbelm was a lot dumber.
You're saying It Invaded is not dumb?
Oh no! It Invaded is very dumb, just like Vivy sometimes, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
All
sure.
right. Well, let's talk about Vivy.
So we should just roll right into it.
Kick things off. A lot has happened since we last talked. We wrapped up the floating factory arc with a fantastic final episode. Some just absolutely, if we're talking about stupid but amazing things happening, like her riding that
jet bike.
Matsumoto jet bike.
I actually, it's a shame that we have to get through so much, but I really actually do want to give Metal Float its proper due, because I do think that it is maybe again, I don't know what our top anime list is going to look like at the end of the year, but if we're talking about single best episode of the season, I think the finale of Metal Float might be up there, just in terms of, I think it's an unbelievably strong encapsulation of what makes Vivy work so well, I think, for a lot of us.
Yeah.
So as a quick recap, because it's literally been 3 weeks, Vivy and Matsumoto were tasked with infiltrating Metal Float, the autonomous AI factory built in the ocean, and destroying it, right? Stopping them from manufacturing AIs. And this episode, the last episode, we discover that Metal Float, to run Metal Float and to ensure that its parameters would stay within like the definitions of what the AIs are programmed to do in serving humanity, it turns out that they picked Grace, the Doctor's robo wife, to become the like
his robo
foundation.
Mom wife.
Yes. And then we find out there's like a little bit of an Oedipal complex there, because turns out that the Doctor met his future wife as a child. There's a, there's
she was the nurse who helped him get born, right?
Yeah,
or like
she tried to take care of him when his parents presumably died, right?
Yeah. And so there's some weird stuff going on there, but like,
well, like that was a great scene in itself. We don't have time to get into it, but like, yeah, continue.
The reveal of it, though, and so we find out that yes, like basically they're using Grace as like the bedrock of building Metal Float's like protocol, right?
Mother brain.
She's like the boss AI, basically.
The mother brain is a good way to put it.
Right.
And as we know, because of the Estelle arc, you cannot transfer AIs across bodies. Their consciousnesses are not kept; they are lost in the transfer. But there's this really like wonderful conflict with the Doctor, right, where like he is trying to convince Vivy, like, no, see, she still sings the song. Look at the little worker AIs; they copy her mannerisms.
It's been plain all along. She's calling for help.
Right, and like you, the viewer, are maybe even like Vivy, caught in a weird place where you're not actually sure, like, is there some part of her still left in there, or is this more like the more horrific realization of like something is puppeting her corpse and saying the lines, it's and I think that conflict is really interesting because like I think that there are actually multiple ways you can approach it, right? I mean, even Matsumoto's like statement to Vivy almost feels a little bit like gaslighting, in the sense that like Vivy was like genuinely unsure about what to make of Grace's situation until Matsumoto kind of pushes her in a certain direction. And I don't know. I think it's like it makes for a really fascinating.
It was really good, like ambiguous situation.
Yeah. Like there's not really a fun, clean, good answer to it, right? And it kind of culminates in Vivy finding yet another loophole in how to like get around the AIs only have one mission rule, and that is, what if an AI had two explicitly distinct, disassociated personalities, each with their own separate mission, right? Yep. So like Vivy declares, like, Diva's desire is to make the world smile with her singing. Vivy's desire, however, is to destroy the AI and save mankind.
Oh man!
And then her brain explodes. But
well, yeah. Like we get this great moment, right? The song, the OP starts playing. She's riding her fucking Matsumoto jet bike. Fucking, it makes for a great like visual spectacle. And at the end of that episode, the end of Metal Float, I think is like, in an episode that I think already is a great episode, is maybe like one of my personal favorite like fucking 2 minutes of an anime in a pretty long time. Just when Vivy confronts the Doctor at the end of the whole Metal Float thing.
You get the great image of I have both the blood of AIs and the blood of man on my hands.
Right. So like spoilers, but yes, the Doctor kills himself after telling like Vivy, like very very pointedly, like, you know how your mission is your mission to bring smiles to people through your singing, and how that is like the thing that drives you, and you could not exist without it. That was Grace for me, and it's a really like, it's a really strong sticking point. I think that. And again, right, like you see the blood of the blue AI blood on one hand from when Vivy punched and ripped out Grace's heart, and the blood from the Doctor on her other hand, and just like Yeah, just like watching Vivy just like shut down from like the horror of the realization, like just like the complete like
conflict
of the laws that she has set up for herself as a result of like trying to like create her two distinct personalities. And I think it's stuff like that has me like maybe almost hyperbolically stating that I don't think since the likes of Nier Automata have I like engaged with a story that has done as many fun and interesting and occasionally tragic things as Vivy.
Right.
With like AI.
Yeah, in this specific realm too.
Right. Specifically in the realm of like AI and like, you know, personhood.
What is
and,
a
like,
man?
Right.
Yeah. And
then
we get
we switch. We go 40 years later.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we have our biggest. This is like our biggest time skip yet, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And we, again, I just love this format of like having to backfill what happened.
Right.
Because they always leave you like on some real dramatic moment, and then they kind of skip you into some pretty mundane, like whatever scenario.
I love Smug Diva. Right.
Yeah. What I love in this arc, starting off like. We skip ahead and we find out that Vivy rebooted and lost all her memories as Vivy, and then
spent another 40 years as Diva.
Yes,
right, but not only
live on
as
Diva,
but specifically
climbing
very
away to the top.
New Diva,
right? And
and
I
almost
love
idealized Diva in a ways.
I love how we as the audience have spent more time with Vivy, but technically this version of Diva has existed way longer than Vivy did.
Yes, and like
I mean, they do portray very nicely how she has become like a fully fledged personality in those 40 years, because she's all of a sudden she's picked up like catchphrases and weird tics and mannerisms.
Yeah, she has mannerisms.
And like every time she says her catchphrase, then it's like also a callback to earlier arcs. It's like this is my pet theory, and then it's something that Estella told her.
Yeah, like I think that's like one of the like really neat bits of characterization there, and they kind of show it subtly throughout the first episode of this new arc of like Diva is clearly very self-assured of her new place in society. She is like she has sort of become like this sort of like weird AI
mega idol,
like if Miku became Beyonce, like just like
a diva, basically.
Right, yeah, a diva. She is the elder spokesman of the AI songstress world, right? Like everybody either wants to be her or with her. Like she is,
she
fucking
is the
queen
closing
bitch of the
act
universe
on the like mega music festival.
Yeah,
for AI human relations, like
right, and yet despite all that, you can kind of tell every now and then, like there is a bit of like unsureness in her, a bit of malaise, because like deep down she knows that she doesn't actually have perfect recall of her whole life, right? Like just there are bits and pieces missing, and she doesn't exactly know why she believes certain things she does, right? Like when she is echoing Estella's, sentiments about what it means to put your heart into something or whatever.
Yeah.
And, it all kind of comes to a head, right, when suddenly we see a very young-looking version of Kakutani, the Toek terrorist. Who should be, like, 70 at this point, but is instead...
right, probably older than that, right?
Looking pretty spry for a 70-year-old, or 80-year-old, or even. And,
Still no indications what the deal with that guy is.
Right,
like,
we don't need. Right, we're 2 episodes into this arc, and
I was convinced like halfway through episode 8 that like he's some like AI he's some like ghost of a memory in Diva's systems, and then no, he physically interacts with the world.
No, he's definitely real.
All right.
Yeah. So I have the theory that Kakutani hates AIs so much he put himself into an android body so he could live forever to continue hunting AIs.
That's good. That's a good one. I would like that more than some kind of, because I don't think this show would go full time travel. Because technically,
because the only time travel we've done is or
Matsumoto technically time traveled in a way, but I don't think they would go full like people time traveling. So yeah, that's a good theory, but let's get to the good bit here.
Ophelia.
with Ophelia, the very subtly named Ophelia, who is one of the up and coming singing AIs.
She's your cute clumsy idol. We programmed clumsiness and depression
right.
into this robot.
There's some real like fucked up. Okay, so we built this robot to be clumsy and insecure about herself, and it's like, I don't know how I feel about that, but
it's some kind of ethical violation.
Also, we put her in this like wacky objectifying dress that's see-through. It's a lot.
Yeah,
there's a lot to go through there that the show won't be going through.
So the big history-changing event here is supposed to be Ophelia killing herself.
Right, that Ophelia is the first AI that decides to self-terminate, and even though the AIs aren't running on exactly the 3 laws that we're familiar with, they are kind of... The idea is that their one single mission should almost always prevent them from self-determination, right? Because self-determination would mean would prevent them from completing their mission. So,
I'm pretty sure that at this point, the 3 laws of robotics are as they are known in the sci-fi fandom are sort of assumed knowledge,
right?
Those are the tropes that this show is
operating on for sure. And so there's definitely a little. So initially, there's kind of the interesting AI mystery of what drives an AI to kill themselves, right? And there's a lot of fun speculation, especially with the introduction of Antonio, the partner she alluded to in the first episode of this arc, that is no longer with them tragically. And we meet Antonio, his dead body resting in a field of flowers, which is very again, that is if that's not the most fucking Nier Automata ass shit you've ever seen,
Right, so they build you up thinking, oh, well, maybe because, she lost her partner and all that, and she has robot depression.
And, Matsumoto says, that's what humans, were willing to empathize with regarding AI, and that was their rallying call for more AI rights, etc. Because, look, they're capable of feeling sorrow at their loved ones dying, etc.
And, then they drop the big twist on us.
Then they drop the big bomb in the last 5 minutes.
This show,
man. It's amazing how it's amazing how the first part, the first half of the latest episode is mostly still just Diva wrangling with the nature of her past, and then the second half is when immediately just everything falls apart.
Yeah, and I have to say the show consistently has delivered some pretty great episode ending cliffhangers here.
Yeah. It's man.
This one was just nuts with Ophelia swapping personalities.
All right, so are we just gonna talk about the Ophelia Antonio gestalt? Is that should we just get into it?
Yeah, if we're gonna draw some more near parallels, there's definitely a bit of the soul replacing the other soul in the body.
Yeah, so
or whatever,
I think this is actually super duper interesting now because apparently this was not known in the official history, right? This is a reveal to both Vivy and Matsumoto, or Diva, I guess. It's still Diva at this point, right? And suddenly this becomes a much more interesting question, right? Because the implications here are that Antonio, again, he basically killed Ophelia, right? Assuming that Ophelia, as we know it, is no longer there, right? It's like Elizabeth, her ego has been destroyed by Antonio taking over.
The interesting thing, though, G, if how would Antonio be able to take over when we have already established that the transfer of a AI mind to a new body erases the mind of the AI?
Right, and so that's what I think is really fascinating. Is how did this happen? Not only how did this happen, but are we even correct that Antonio possessed Ophelia? Is it some or maybe they actually are a genuine gestalt, right? Maybe they are actually a legitimate combination of the two, right?
Or maybe it is Ophelia thinking that she is Antonio.
Right, has Ophelia disassociated an Antonio personality? Because we have clearly shown, we are shown that Diva could do the same. I mean, this is what I love about Vivy, right? Is that because of the ways they have shown how the rules work in this setting, it gives us this whole smorgasbord of ways in which we could choose to interpret and speculate about it.
Right.
But also, so if that means that this Antonio, Ophelia just all killed themselves even in the original timeline, right? And if we were to take the Ophelia that is speaking to us in these 2 episodes at her face value of, she is trying to discover the meaning of her singing, right? Does that mean that was the thing that even bothered Antonio, right? And,
Right, because in the flashback, Antonio is like, "Your singing's great, but like these people don't appreciate it, and we need to like come up with a way for you to become more appreciated."
Ooh,
right.
How about what if Antonio in the original timeline also took over Ophelia and had her kill herself to become famous, to become like a legend?
It's possible.
That could be an interesting.
So I see no reason, if in the original timeline, like I see no reason that it wouldn't have still been Antonio who had Ophelia's life.
Right, because
right.
I think that part is definitely in stone. The thing I think is more interesting is what are the motivations, right? Because one possible speculation that I arrived at is, was Antonio like the logical conclusion of the very overbearing patriarchal producer who's like, who's basically just like, if my client can't do it, then I'll just do it myself, right? Like, how hard could it be, right? I just need her voice, you know. Right. Like, I'm just gonna jump and take her body, use her voice combined with my, producing knowledge, and turn her into a star. But then, clearly, that didn't work, at least not initially, because they make it very clear that the few years after Antonio's quote-unquote passing, Ophelia's career went through something of a slump. Right. And then, is Antonio's actual desire to self-terminate is because he is frustrated that his plan actually did not work, right? Like, he thought, simple, I'll take over her body, and I'll do the singing for her, and I'll be a fucking pop star, right? And clearly that is not actually how singing works, right? Like, Diva very much makes it clear that, like, there is no formula to becoming a world-famous pop star, like...
Right.
That sounds like something a world-famous pop star would say.
Fair enough.
Except Ophelia is doing really well. Like,
I mean, she is one of the 13 best, like,
right,
or the 12
which is
best.
Why
but clearly she's dissatisfied, right? Like,
yeah.
Every time we see her sing, right? Remember, like in the earlier episode, we always see that kind of look of like that little grimace on her face, right? After every time she sang. So clearly there is something about.
It looks stiff and awkward, and it's not the animation for once.
Like, there's definitely something Antonio is dissatisfied with about the situation that drives him to kill himself, or them. Again, it's hard to tell how much of Ophelia is in there.
Right.
And man, just this show, man, it's like because I think we were all going at the end of Metal Float. Like, how the fuck do you escalate from Metal Float, right? Like, Metal Float is like basically the penultimate level of Nier Automata, right? Some real become as gods shit. And It's like, how do you even step down from that? And in a way, is going more personal with this Ophelia subplot, I think. And again, with like Kakatani out there, like young for some reason.
Yeah.
There's just like so much shit going on here.
Plus, then the episode ending was like his
backstory
as.
Right, like he was saved by his piano teacher, and like there's even the implication at the very end that like, is Matsumoto becoming outdated? Because like as time goes on, like people are able to hack him. Like, he used to be... Right. Like, there's a really interesting power dynamic there where at the very beginning of the timeline,
he
like,
was,
Matsumoto...
by far the most advanced AI
And, like, now he's kind of old fucking news, right? Like,
right.
Like,
yeah, he's a lot more, like, on his heels in these episodes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun to see Matsumoto be like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. I've been hacked.
The footage just been hacked, and it's not me.
The role reversal works very good because this time we've got Diva sassing him around, and like her being the more sort of because she has been around for 40 years. She knows a lot more about the situation she's in than he is because he comes from a completely different timeline.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
Her accumulated life experience is a lot lot more than his now at this point.
Yeah, it's.
This show's great.
What a good anime, god damn.
Yeah.
Might I remind you that the show was written by the guy who wrote RE0?
Look, I went back and listened to what we said in the preview podcast. We definitely were, no point in lie. We were all skeptical of this show. Like,
credit where credit's due.
We were all skeptical of Akudama Drive being a Danganronpa guy, so...
Yeah.
New GLORIO law, like a new original anime made by someone who was involved in RE0 will be good.
Right. I mean, South Pole.
All right, we got to move on, but
all right.
We do.
There's just so many. We got our predictions on paper, but
it's true.
Or on recording, whatever you want to call it,
or at least something resembling it.
On tape. All right, let's move on.
NOMAD.
Megalobox 2 NOMAD. What's been going on since we last left off of that?
Joe is making a comeback, kinda, sorta.
Joe.
Okay, where do we leave off? Shit.
Joe had a hard life. Here's the thing. I was checking. We didn't even get into the surgery stuff yet last time we talked.
Right,
so we have to wind this clock back a fair bit. But long story short, after saving the immigrants and befriending Chief and like getting his shit back together, Joe basically came to the realization that regardless of how he's received, he had to return back to the people he abandoned and, reconcile, or at least attempt to. And so he does. He goes back. He meets with.
We get the flashback episode that shows, as he returns to meet with everybody. We get the flashbacks of like what exactly happened.
Right, and it's tragic, man. It's Joe really fucked up, but in ways that like feel like very real. So
this is with like the old crew from season 1.
Yeah. So he's like meeting up with like the orphan kids that like he befriended
that
in
are
season
now
1.
mouthy tweens who are drinking beer and.
So, kind of a classic tale, right? Like after the big win at Megalonia, Nanbu and Joe built their own boxing gym. Training other up and coming Megalo boxers, and just finding peace in their lives in a post like Joe getting to fight his way out of everything world. Until Nanbu comes down with a terminal case of cancer. And, they're informed that he doesn't have long to live, and there is no treatment, not even in this fucking cyberpunk future world, and that at best, there's a very expensive procedure that they can go through that'll, extend his life by maybe another 6 months. And Nanbu doesn't want anything of it. Joe's coach, he's like, Joe and Nanbu are to each other the closest each of them has to a family member, and Nanbu's done fighting. Like, he doesn't want to do this anymore, right? He wants to retire. He wants to spend his final days with his loved ones and his family, just like he's basically telling Joe, like, look, kid, like, we had a good run, we fought our way to the top, we beat the best, we proved the world wrong about us. Let's just be a family. And Joe can't cope with it. He can't come to terms with the mortality of the closest thing he has to a father. And so he starts using boxing as an escape. In the background, they keep talking about how Yuri, his big rival from season 1, has a new protege named Edwin Liu, who is kind of the next big up-and-comer, and they want to have an exhibition match with Joe. And if Joe wins, he could get the money to afford the surgery. But Joe's been out of practice for like 2-3 years.
Right.
He's been a coach, but he hasn't been fighting. And so if he were to like put up a fight, he would need to go really hard in the training, like 24/7, which would mean not spending a lot of time with the now bedridden Nanbu.
It's like Nanbu's like, you don't need to do this, Joe. I'm okay with like just enjoying our time together. And the kids also are kind of like that, but are kids and they're heartbroken over Nanbu dying, right? And so Joe is like, I need to do this to extend Nanbu's life for the kid. I'll do it for the kids.
When he's really doing it for himself. And,
right.
And so he sequesters himself in his training. He stops visiting Nanbu. Like, in many ways, it's very obvious that like Joe is trying to cope, right? Because all Joe's life, he has managed to, punch his way out of life's problems, right? Like boxing is how he fixed things in his life, and it's all he knows. And so he throws himself into it, right? He obsesses over it again. And, this whole time we kind of just watch Nanbu waste away. And again, all Nanbu wants to do is just see Joe. And it's pretty hard to watch. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty hard, like, because you because it's a flashback, you know where it's all going, right? It's a car crash in slow motion,
right?
And so like Joe he's trained himself for the big fight, and of course, because this is this kind of show, day of the big fight, Nanbu goes critical, right? Like he takes a real turn for the worse, like, and Joe is just like so out of it. Because he has now realized the realization hits him all at once,
like
right?
In round one,
like as soon as he fucking steps to the ring, he realized this was all for nothing. Like, he wasted all the time he could have spent with Nanbu, all for this one long shot chance that really never had a chance to begin with. Like, Nanbu is dying in the middle of this match, and so it doesn't even matter anymore. It doesn't matter if he wins. Like, it's already too late.
So it goes down in round 2. Like,
yeah, like, pretty badly. It's barely a fight. Joe is a very sore loser about it. He makes a real fucking bad showing at the end of that match. Just in general, he just, he self-destructs. He stomps on every little bit of, like, reputation and pride he has left at that point. And at that lowest moment, Sachio, one of the orphan kids, and sort of like a just, he's a kid, all right. To remind you, this kid is like 10 years old. Yeah. Like, lashes out at Joe and says, like, get the fuck out of our lives. And that was the last they heard of Joe until now. And it's like,
So now he's got to clean all that up.
Yeah, and like, the kids are not that forgiving, right? Because, like, it's like, you abandoned us when, like, Joe was the only other adult figure in that family. It was Nambu, then Joe, and then a bunch of orphans between the ages of, like, 8 to 12. And he abandoned them. And they are rightfully kind of resentful. Yeah. Like, a lot of them don't even, like, mind that, like, or at least at this point they're like, Joe, we don't even care that, like, you took that match. We don't even care that, like, you left Nanbu to die alone. Like, what's done is done there. But, like, you shouldn't have left us.
Right.
We were children.
Right.
And most of them do not forgive him. Right. And this all culminates in a really great moment where one of the kids has managed to, like, earn enough money to own his own restaurant. And he gets trashed by a bunch of, generically Yakuza-looking goons who steal, like, the deed to the land. And Joe shows up, and he's like, I want that deed back. And at first you think, oh, okay, he's going to, like, win a boxing match to get the land back, right? This is back
at his, like, at the same, like, underground ring he was fighting at the beginning of season 1,
right? And may I remind you, one of Joe's core character principles is that he doesn't throw matches. He never rigs fights. He believes that should he win or lose, it should be on his terms. And so he jumps into the ring, and everyone's like, it's time, the return of Gearless Joe, the debut, right? And you're all thinking, and they're very clearly trying to set this as, like, this is how Joe's going to win back the kids' love, is he's going to win this boxing match, get the deed back, and save the day.
Right.
He doesn't. Joe gets pounded to dirt in, like, the third round. And at the end, it turns out he did get the deed back, because the deal he made was not, I'm going to win the match and get the deed back. He willingly throws a fight to help the people around him. And
he learned the lesson from Chief.
It's a really wonderful character building moment. It's like, you don't feel good about it because, he got the fucking dirt beat out of him, but it's like a really wonderful character defining moment that really actually does show how much he's grown.
It feels like the whole message of this, both, like, throughout, even going back to season 1, has been, like, life is bigger than boxing, right? Like, there are, there's more to it than, going and dying in the ring. It's almost like the counterpoint to the original series it's based off of.
Oh, totally.
Right? Like,
yeah.
That, at the end of the day, it's just a sport or whatever, right? Like, what's more important is, like, the people in your life and everything, right? So that's a real interesting, real fascinating twist.
Stuff with this sequel. I really love it.
Right, and I'm like, I have heard that, like, a lot of the season 1 did get a fair amount of criticism for not hewing close enough to Ashita no Joe, where he totally dies at the end. So it's good to see the sequel, like, doubling down on.
Yeah, they're sticking to their guns on what they think is, like, an interesting, like, what a sequel to, or a spiritual sequel to Ashita no Joe should be. It's really fascinating. And just quick shout outs. The most recent episode has Joe meeting with, like, Yuri and some of the, like, some other people in his life. And there's an interesting contrast because when he meets with his rivals, they're a lot more welcoming to him. And it makes sense, right? Because, like, in a weird ways, they were more distant, right? They were more like professional partners, right? So for them, the sting was not as much. So they're just happy to see Joe back and, like, not fucking dead in a gutter. And, Joe spars with Edwin Liu, the guy who beat him, a few years ago, and like it's kind of fun because it's like there's no like hard feelings, there's no bitterness in it, right? It's just
right.
I was so ready for this new Edwin Liu guy to be the typical like arrogant young rival punk, but he's actually like a pretty chill guy, and he's just like, look, man, like I know I didn't fight you at your best. Maybe we'll never fight in the ring officially ever again, but like, please give me a chance to fight you for real. I want to feel the fists of Gearless Joe, And what happens next is like maybe the best animated 30 minutes of hand-to-hand fighting I've seen in like, oh, it's good boxing. It's good boxing, dude. It's
pretty good.
Oh, it's chef's kiss. Like, it's just this little sparring match, no other witnesses but Yuri and a couple of kids watching, from the window. Just beautiful boxing happening here. And
it's good good to hear they can still step that up when they need to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If they're saving their budget this season because they have a lot more like downtime and talking, then they're bringing it out when it truly matters. So
yeah. All right.
Good sequel, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's encouraging to hear that again. They're doing something. They're doing their own thing with it, and they're justifying the sequel, right? But yeah, we got to keep moving. Let's keep moving. Let's talk about Super Cub. This show's great. I love it. It's getting better every week.
Are you paging through Honda catalogs yet, Jill?
Oh yeah, totally. It's totally working. I want to get a small motorcycle and ride across the Japanese countryside.
As someone who has always wanted a small motorcycle since the days of Fooly Cooly, I think the reality of living in California was the like greatest like reality check to those dreams.
Yeah. If you want to go sit in traffic on your small motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I've always kind of wanted one too, and this is just sparking that. But I think it's great because like they're doing some nice character work on top of the slice of life stuff. Right now, I think there's going to be a third girl at some point. Although as of halfway through the show, it's only been the two girls, and kind of watching the main girl develop from, where she was in the beginning of the show to where she's kind of gaining some confidence and actually having fun in her life by, riding the motorcycle, has been pretty neat to watch. But they did something cool with episodes 4 and 5 where they split the girls up for the summer vacation episodes. And they kind of showed one episode what one girl was doing, and then they swapped over to the perspective of her friend in one of the episodes, which was like totally different. And it was pretty cool. She like, for some reason, she was like determined to climb Mount Fuji with her cub.
Okay.
Which is technically illegal now, but she takes this like super hard job like hauling freight or something, which I can't believe they gave this job to a 16-year-old girl, but and it basically kind of legally gives her a reason that she can ride up the mountain.
Of course. Yeah.
And like the whole tone of the show changes because like she's a very different person than the other girl. And it's like much more like intense and like, she's trying to ride up the mountain as they're playing like, this like intense butt rock track.
Okay.
And she's just getting her ass kicked. Like she keeps wiping out, and like then she starts getting higher and she like can't breathe because of the altitude and all that. And you're like, why is she even doing this other than she just enjoys it or whatever. But and she's like, I told my friend that that the Super Cub could take her anywhere, and I'm gonna prove it. and then she breaks her bike and can't ride anymore. But it was all about the journey and not the destination and whatnot.
Of course,
and she's satisfied. And so so they meet up later, and she's like telling her about it, and she's like, yeah, that was a really dumb and reckless thing to do. The other girl was like telling her, right? So the next episode, they're like, through various circumstances, the main girl now has to ride a pretty long distance, which includes going by the base of Mount Fuji. And like there's this moment where she like looks at the mountain, like she suddenly just gets it, like she understands. And so she like tries to climb it a little bit herself.
Sure.
And then after a while she kind of stops and she just looks up and she's like, well, I'll let you off today. And then she goes on her way. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. But the person she was in episode 1 versus that in episode 6 was like, you can see the character progression, and it's pretty great.
Well, that's cool.
Plus her friend I think is going to be a dark horse for best girl of the year. She's pretty great.
So something that I wanted to ask about this show, Gel, is that like whenever you talk about it, it reminds me a lot of another show that's very popular, and I wanted to see if like how does this compare to Laid Back Camp at all?
Yeah, I did make that comparison when it started, and I think there are some parallels to draw there. Particularly, one of the things I actually liked a lot about Laid Back Camp is the fact that the characters are not like once the group is formed, they're not like always together all the time.
Yeah, that's particularly was a thing I pointed out, like how they split up the cast and focus a lot on the characters on their own.
Right. It's not just like sometimes they're together and then sometimes they're off doing their own thing. And yes, that is kind of similar to what they do in Laid Back Camp. I kind of like this better. It's a little more, for me anyway, it's like a little more down to earth. Whereas Laid Back Camp still has a pretty heavy injection of like cute anime girls with pink hair.
There is less of a obligatory attempt to be like a 4-koma comedy kind of thing.
Yes, like, there's like zero attempt here. It's all very like kind of serious and grounded.
Despite the high school girl focus.
Right. But like everybody has normal hair color and all that. Like it's.
I know this is like probably we don't have time for this kind of tangent, but like, what is it about product placement in Japanese properties that always works and feels okay to me, whereas like product placement in Western works always feels like insidious and gross? Like, I think about, like, Calorie Mate in Metal Gear Solid 3, where, like, Big Boss is just fucking unironically looking into the camera and talking about how great Calorie Mate is. Or, like,
Cup Noodle in Final Fantasy 15.
Oh, right. Or, like...
Pizza Hut and Code Geass.
Right, or, like, you talking about, like, the motorcycles. And it's like, is it because of the blatantness that, like, we almost don't mind it because it's so, like, fucking obvious? Or, like...
Right, they're not trying to fool us with it, right? Like, it's...
I think it's a combination of being blatant, the fact that the brands being promoted are like weird and exotic as opposed to like the same like capitalist bullshit you get shoved down your throat every day. Like, oh,
except you literally just said Pizza Hut.
Right.
Yeah, that's I guess Pizza Hut. But is Pizza Hut like Pizza Hut is like Pizza Hut and Code Geass is like a meme. I don't think it counts. Forever, whatever you're talking about.
But,
man.
Yeah. Well, in this case, the product is actually integral to the show itself.
I know. Yeah, like I'm not saying it's just shoved in there as like a cheap marketing thing. But it's more like,
oh no, it is.
Why does it work? Why does it work so well in so many like Japanese properties in a way that I don't like instantly like turn away from?
It's because what you talked about last time. You know, the Super Cup is more than a product. You know, it is an iconic something that has its own history and that as such deserves to have sort of like this homage, this love letter. Like it is as if we would make a show about the Vespa, you know?
Right.
Then it's more than just product placement, you know? The Vespa is like an iconic thing that represents a certain
it's a
lifestyle.
Culture thing.
Yeah.
There was one bit where the main girl is having her inner monologue about her new friend and she's like, I don't know if we're friends, but we're both Cub owners, and maybe that's even stronger or something like this.
That is some like Harley Davidson biker stuff. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure I've read PR copy from Harley Davidson that is basically along those lines.
Yeah. So, anyway, that show's great. It's continuing to surprise me in how good it is. I was expecting to drop it after the first episode, and for whatever reason, I decided to give it another one.
No, it generally sounds all right. Like, if this season weren't so busy as it is, I'd almost want to try to find the time to maybe check it out.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot going on.
We're not
though,
watching.
So.
God, there's so many more shows on this list.
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's talk about 86. 86.
Talking about 86, the anime 86 in episode 86 of the GLORIO chat.
Yes, good call.
God damn it.
86, 86, 86. 86 is all the way down.
Maybe that should be the title of this episode.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy. The show continues to not really go hard enough on anything it
continues to
does.
Not really stick the landing despite maybe its decent intentions. It continues to just really fumble it at every given step.
After when being called out for being a racist last time, right?
I mean, after literally being told to check her privilege, right? Like,
go ahead, Jell.
Well, that's kind of where I was going. That's we left off
right
where it felt like they were going somewhere, and it sounds like they did not.
No,
really.
You see, she went and asked all of them what their names were, and so now everything's okay. Basically,
yeah.
Right? Like,
she's not a racist. She made some black friends.
Wow.
So
I can't be racist. I know black people.
So I think
she went to like one of those places where black people go and met a couple of them, and now she's not racist anymore.
So I think the thing that is frustrating about the resolution of this conflict is that it doesn't feel like it's really earned, and the show itself shows ways in which it actually could have been tangibly earned.
Right.
And that is maybe what is like annoying to me.
If they had rearranged some of the events, it would have worked.
Right, because
better.
like all that really happens is that basically the squatties call her out. Right, I mean they literally tell her to check her privilege. They be like, hey, fuck you. Like all your like wokeness is performative. You don't actually mean it. And all we really see is that she mopes for like 20 minutes and then gives yet another very long-winded apology. Except this time she swears she wants to now learn their names and gets to know them. And like. So really all that happens, so literally what happens is that the squatties call her out on all of her kind words being platitudes with no substance behind them, and so she fixes it with more platitudes with no substance behind them, but now for some reason...
But now she looks at the camera and says, but I mean it this time.
Right,
but so what you're saying is... So what you're saying is she got cancelled and then made an apology video?
Right, but this time she definitely means it, and the squatties just kind of accept it. Like, some of them are like... You're still a piece of shit, but I guess you're okay. And it's like, no, like she didn't actually fix anything. And the annoying thing about this is that in the prior episode, she actually did go through the effort of like digging up like map terrain information from the archives that the 86 squatties didn't have access to.
Right.
And providing it to them. And that is like actual real tangible like evidence of goodwill that shows that she is in fact trying to help preserve the lives of the people under her command. Right. Except she does this before the check your privilege speech.
Yeah.
And so like
it just doesn't play like
right. So it's almost like if you had just done the map subplot after the call out speech, then not only is she giving her platitudes about how she's going to strive to be better, but if she had actually provided them with the map information,
actually taking steps, like...
right? That shows that she's taking actual actionable like steps towards improving their situation,
right?
And so, just purely down to the ordering, it loses its teeth, and it just feels like such a basic mistake to make.
I feel like the only acceptable path I would take from the show at this point is if she like just flat out quits and joins their crew and they like fight the power. Like that's the only like pathway that would interest me on this at this point.
Tell me about what you think about the pathway of changing gears and finding out that the evil drones are actually people.
Oh, was that not a thing already?
It was a very obviously implied thing that they finally confirmed in the driest, least interesting way possible.
Because I just automatically assumed that if the good guy drones were people, then the bad guy drones were people.
Right, but like up till now,
good guy,
like up till now, they didn't find bodies in the bad guy drones, so that lent some credence to like, oh, they must be AI controlled. However, we find out in the most boring way possible because what's her name, Alina, the commander girl, is not actually there. She's literally basically tuned into a Skype call.
Everything has to be fucking narrated to her.
Right. So like it loses its ability to like actually strongly communicate a lot of the stuff. So like basically the 86ers or the commander of the 86ers explains to her, oh yeah, so like one time we found out that actually what the Legion are doing is they like harvest the brainwaves of like dead 86ers and incorporates their knowledge into their like AI like algorithm matrix. And so that's why they're actually like growing stronger and smarter over time. And like, you know how your military leadership is feeding you that line about how the AIs have like a time limit? That was the old generation. Thanks to, because
they're cutting off our brains.
They're like growing a whole new generation of like smarter, stronger, more powerful Legion. And this is not explained through visuals. We don't actually see them like popping open a cockpit and fighting some horrible like Tetsuo the Iron Man like tech horror monstrosity. No, it's literally all just explained in dialogue, like from one character to the other with no visual accompaniment whatsoever. And it's just like it's just like, really? This is your big reveal?
Right.
This is how you choose to do it?
I feel like that would be an appropriate segue to the next show, but we'll get to that. So, I mean, I was giving my observation as someone who's only seen episode 1, but where do you guys think this show is going at this point?
So the main plot they've now hinted at is that the reason that the Legions are so strong is because so they don't even, that's the thing, because they explain in dialogue, they don't even really break down how it works in a particularly satisfying way, because they just say, they harvest the brain waves. Because like, of course, like Lena almost immediately says like, well, what about the bodies? Like, well, you usually find the bodies intact, but like, we can tell, like, I don't know, somehow they just like, the Legion like scanned their brains and like, but didn't need the body, until they point out that actually there was, however, one case in which we found a headless corpse. And so clearly they did in fact take
Shin or whatever goes and makes sure to like shoot in the head anyone who is shot down. Like,
and the headless corpse was, of course, none other than the 86 Commander's older brother, who also rescued Lena during her childhood, 10, 15 years ago. So see, it all comes together full circle. And so, like, yeah, the implication is that the 86 Commander's brother is like the mother, is the Grace, is the mother brain controlling metal float that is generating the Legion that
right.
And that they gotta find his head and destroy it for good. And yeah, it's like, and here's the thing, I'm not even opposed to a lot of this stuff because, look, I love the Valkyria Chronicles games, and I'm never going to imply those games are like particularly nuanced portrayals of anime military fiction, but it's just,
well, this show's like, it's poking around in places, right?
That are interesting, but it just doesn't have the willingness to like fully commit to them in more compelling ways.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep moving then.
Yep.
Let's talk about Pretty Boy Detective Club.
Uh-huh.
Since we last spoke, they wrapped up the first arc, and we had a second arc.
So they found the space station or whatever? Like,
no, that didn't. That was not important.
Oh, okay.
So the first arc, I really enjoyed. It was basically the rise of the main girl and how she joins the Pretty Boy Detective Club.
Uh-huh.
And I really like her character, and she has like kind of some neat development as she goes from like this sort of resentful aimless person to Mayumi the Seer, the sixth member of the Pretty Boy Detective Club, blah blah blah. They all have fancy titles.
Right.
So that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was really stylish, and there's some neat ideas going on. And I think because the focus was on her, a character that I really enjoyed it. And the second arc, not so much. They get their first case, which kind of highlights one of the like biggest problems I have with the show is like they're all supposed to be in middle school, so they're all like really really young, but it has no bearing on what's happening whatsoever. Like, they might as well be adults. You know how that goes with anime. But so they uncover this underground middle school casino.
Okay, tell me more.
Kakegurui.
Yes, there's a little bit of Kakegurui vibes, but it's really lame. The whole thing ends up being like they're cheating by using some like new invisibility technology, but she can see it with her. She can see what's going on with her magic eyes, and then they're like, and she just calls them out, and they close the casino, and like somehow they stretch this out over 2 episodes.
No, that's it. That sounds like the start of a case, not the case.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's pretty much it. Now, there might be some other things going on that'll pop up later, but at least for that arc, that was the whole story. It was pretty disappointing. And then this latest episode, they started this next case where they found a bunch of paintings that were like the most famous paintings in the world, like recreations, but they don't have people in them, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. For some reason, this is important. I don't know.
Someone really likes backgrounds, I guess.
Yeah, but I have to say it's funny because like this is a adaptation of a manga, not a light novel,
right? Okay.
But it feels like it's an adaptation of a light novel because
isn't that because of Nishio Isin? Yeah.
Yes, there is a ton of talking that is completely unnecessary, which wasn't bad I don't know what happened. It wasn't bad in the first arc, and then ever since then it's been like almost Monogatari levels of standing around talking. This latest episode in particular, I was like, there's this whole big flashback about this teacher that they think painted these paintings. And rather than like having a flashback and showing us what's happened, it's just like one of the guys standing there talking about it for like 10 minutes and with like very sparse visuals of it, but basically him just talking for 10 minutes. So it's like, this is animation. You could have shown us this.
That sounds like a serious shortcoming on the side of the adaptation. Like,
yes. Well, I mean, who knows what the manga looked like too, but I think it has a lot to do with Nishio Isin because that's how he does things. But yeah, I've been disappointed with it ever since the first 3 episodes. And
I mean, it might also be because Nishio Isin is a novelist. He may not be able to adapt to a split or a dual medium, a mixed medium, like manga, like anime.
But Medaka Box was so popular.
Well, I would say
Medaka Box. I only know one thing about Medaka Box, and that is that people loved posting screenshots of that with ginormous speech bubbles. So
yeah, I will say, I'm not going to say Medaka Box was good, but I did not really feel like that had this problem, or at least as bad. So maybe it's Shinbo, because Shinbo did not direct Medaka Box, but
I mean, it's probably the combination of both, because they both like
that's like their comfort zone
slightly
at this point,
quirky
right?
stuff that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like when you say to me, "Oh, it's a bunch of famous paintings without people on it," that sounds fundamentally like a idea that someone came up with. Was like, "Hey, that's a cool idea," and then
but right, it doesn't actually mean anything.
It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean that's part of why I felt like the first part had actual thematic meaning with the main girl's like development as a character, and her figuring out what she wants to be and all that, and like that felt like it had a purpose, whereas this is just like random stuff happening since then, and it's
could that be because the first arc was a bit more out of the let's solve a mystery comfort zone?
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, might be it.
Either way, I'm pretty disappointed so far, but unfortunately, I think I've hit the halfway mark. I'm committed now, so
you're in it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that goes, but let's move on.
Does it at least still look nice?
Oh yeah, if you like shaft posing, and whatnot, it's fabulous in all caps for sure. So it is still a visual spectacle, but not much more than that. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Odd Taxi.
Oh boy,
man, another anime that's like, where do you even start?
We haven't even talked about the Gacha Gamer
God.
episode.
Oh my god, did we never even get to Gacha?
No.
Oh man, this is a whole arc we got to talk about.
Because look, I don't know if I'm really all that high on Odd Taxi overall, but that Gacha Gamer episode was a masterpiece.
I think that Gacha Gamer episode, so for context, this Odd Taxi is the one with the walrus taxi cab driver and animal people, and everybody's got deep-seated problems. And yeah, so episode 4 is kind of like a standalone, right? Where it's like it gets into the interiority of like a single bit character who showed up for like half a second in like episode 3, and it's like it's kind of getting to like it's this really fascinating character study of like how does one fall into addiction?
What if Joker 2019 but good?
In a ways, kind of actually, right? Of like what are like.
Yes, that episode was better than Joker 2019.
Well, in the sense that, right, that the episode does a great job of explaining it. It is no single incident that drives a person to like true madness. Like it is a process. It is a process that happens over the course of years.
Bad day.
Yeah, like we get into this whole like this dude's childhood, like collecting erasers as a way to try to like. Establish, I think every person who has like been a kid who has lived through a fad understands this feeling of like, oh man, like I need to buy this thing to earn societal like approval of my peers, right? And
I have to buy this fidget spinner or whatever that.
Yeah, and like
earn society points,
right? And like. How that led to him buying this super expensive eraser, which is, by the way, the eraser that Shirakawa the nurse gave to the walrus.
Yep.
Is this like super expensive eraser that he bid on using his dad's credit card, and that went about roughly as well as you expected. And that whole episode is just a car crash in slow motion, right? Like just the how that leads to him later on getting into a gacha game and. Like, once again, ascribing societal approval to his ability to spend money on a Skinner box, and, like, even, like, the great, like, how quickly you lose the high of of rolling in a gacha game, right? Like you're like, oh, another 5-star, like whatever. Like I'm looking for the 6 stars here, or whatever.
Right, got to get that SSR dodo. But
right. Like SRs are nothing to me. It just like it's really fascinating, right? I mean, the pedantic person in me wants to point out that the dodo game, the zoo game that this dude was playing must be one of the really badly made gacha games, because my understanding is that most gacha games store that information on server side, not client side.
Yes.
So like the moment you've bought the role, it has already been logged in. Like there's no way.
Right, before you actually see it, it's already been determined.
It's already been determined, yeah.
Right.
But,
that may be the tragedy that he doesn't know that.
Well. Or actually, maybe the bigger tragedy. I mean, and then I have no sympathy for him. Is the implication that his phone fell into the river, got broken, he had to get it rebooted. Is that apparently he couldn't recover his account? Is he one of those gacha gamers who didn't do the whole tie your account?
Yeah, you gotta link your account, man.
Gotta link your account, man. Yeah,
gotta link your account. No, I have to say the show does a very good job of making these just like. Really miserable, pathetic characters.
It's just like it seems to be. It's like every episode there's a new examination of how someone's life can fall apart. Right.
And it seems very specific to like things that would only happen in the past like 5 to 10 years, right? Like whether it's social media, ruining your life to become a YouTube star, or getting scammed on a dating app or something like.
Right.
I mean, I keep saying this show is like one of those adult animation shows. Like I haven't seen it. I think you have, but is this show in any way resemble like BoJack Horseman or something like that?
I think now
because that's what it reminds me of.
I think we made that comparison.
Yeah, there is actually a little bit of that. Yeah, there's a little bit of that kind of like very specific type of like adult melancholy. Like just malaise of drifting through life in Odd Taxi,
right?
And then, we're talking about this, but then also, as I love to sometimes say about anime, sometimes anime then decides to enter the Yakuza dimension. And that's what happened in the most 2 recent episodes of Odd Taxi.
I mean, you call this the Yakuza dimension, but honestly, that's an inherent strength of anime, even in something as sort of like melancholy as this, or something as like complex and heartfelt like Vivy, you still have that small core of like buck wild crazy.
Yeah, like sometimes anime just decides to turn it on, and I think it actually really speaks to like. So I was reading synopses of each of the episodes of Odd Taxi, and I think it's actually really interesting is that actually it was so gradual, but you guys realize the last 2 episodes of this anime have been fucking crazy, right? Like,
yes.
like we keep talking, this show's so like mundane, and fucking Gotcha Gamer's fucking firing a loaded gun in a hostess club. The same hostess club from Yakuza. Like,
it's literally the hostess club from Yakuza.
Like just
right.
Like,
I was expecting
I just love how casual Odokawa is about the fact that there's like a lunatic out to kill him. It's like, there's a guy with a gun trying to kill you, and he's like, all in a day's work.
Some shit. You're a taxi driver, you see some shit.
Yeah, it's just...
And we still don't know what's in his what or who is in his closet.
God, what is going on there? But yeah, so like the last 2 episodes, right, are kind of they spend that entire episode on Gotcha Gamer to sort of set up what is like, I guess, the current conflict of the most recent episodes, which is like they're still looking for the missing girl.
Yep.
Odokawa is trying to like wrangle with his own feelings about Shirakawa, especially in light of the recent reveals that like Shirakawa kind of does the classic.
No,
she tries to get away.
I really did fall in love with you.
Falling in love with you was never part of the plan.
But I couldn't help it. And I love that Odokawa was like, fucking save it. Like, I'm not, like, I'm a 41-year-old taxi driver. I don't have the time or energy to
deal with this shit.
To deal with this. Right, like, he's teaming up with Dobu now to, like, I think basically get his gun back, first of all, right? But
Right.
Right.
But also he does kind of care about Shirakawa.
Right, he does make a deal with Dobu that, like, hey, like, if I help you on this, you cancel Shirakawa's debts, right? Because it is eventually, as we suspected, Shirakawa was smuggling drugs out of Goriki's clinic to pay back the debt she owed to Dobu. And also, I want to say because I guess I didn't get a chance to say this in the podcast yet. Ditch, which is the name of the number 1 person on the leaderboard of the Dodo Gotcha game. Dobu is a way to say ditch in Japanese. So there is an implication that maybe Dobu himself is also nursing a pretty hard gotcha habit.
God.
It's all interconnected.
Is his whole crime spree just to pay for his...
Just to pay for his gotcha?
Gotcha
it might be. It actually might be. Like... The implication, right, is that other Gotcha gamer nearly went into debt just like trying to get into the crack the top 100, right?
Yeah.
So what the how much money is Dobu dropped? How much of a whale is he if he's number 1 on the leaderboard?
Right.
And then
but that was also the name of the
seller of the eraser.
Yeah.
The seller of the eraser, right? Yeah.
Yes, and remember, Dobu gave the eraser to Shirakawa. So was Dobu running like fucking eBay scams even back when he was like a fucking teenager?
Yeah. We might be headed in that direction, right?
So, like, in a weird way, it's like, Dobu's like, I lost my gun. It's like, actually, Dobu, you lost your gun 20 years ago when you scammed this poor child.
Oh, man.
And then there's also
this show would do that.
There's also the
I feel like this show
would
do that.
The comedians and, like, their relationship falling apart.
And speaking of going into debt, Kakihana, the monkey,
oh my God.
is like also entering the Yakuza dimension because he's taking out loans with loan sharks
to pay for his weird
another
relationship with the team.
Oh, can we even get into that dinner? That dinner is like one of the I hate to use this term, but one of like the cringiest, most awkward things I've ever watched.
Is this another miserable, pathetic person?
Like that date where like he clearly has never like dined at a restaurant this nice before. He clearly has no clue what he's doing.
It like he's Kaya or whatever.
And like he is like completely flubbing at holding any kind of meaningful conversation with a girl who is clearly not interested in him.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
God.
Oh man, just like you said, like a glorious inspection of some truly pathetic people. It's
I I don't know where we're going with all this. Like, I mean, there's a plot, but like,
but what does it all mean?
Where are we going with this? I don't know.
Waiting for like the one episode where everything converges simultaneously, right?
Like
some kind of just total train wreck.
Right, I'm just waiting, for the episode where Gotcha Gamer has Odokawa cornered on the rooftop of the Millennium Tower.
And then the like idol fanboy comes in, and it turns
out
Sip-kun
who won the lottery.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone is gonna get smoked in this show, it's him or the hippo guy, right?
The hippo guy who's like
vigilante
hero of justice on YouTube or whatever.
Oh god, I also fucking like had some real bad secondhand embarrassment from that video. I was like, oh man, this is hard to watch.
It's like combination call out video and like weird Shunibyo internet warrior shit.
All right.
Good show.
We got to keep moving.
I know. It's too much.
Let's talk about To Your Eternity.
Oh, boy.
So,
speaking of too much.
Jell, as the only non-manga reader here, tell us what you think.
I can't take this, guys. I can't take it.
I assure you, to the audience listening, we are not laughing at a dead child. We are laughing at...
You're laughing at a man who is sad about dead children, you pussy.
Yeah, look, no. Like, I'm pretty sensitive about violence with children and whatnot.
It's rough. It's pretty rough.
And this isn't like... There's a big difference between, like, the anime kids fighting each other or whatever with superpowers or whatever versus like an actual depiction of a child being murdered,
like a real ass child,
like an actual real child being murdered,
and they don't shy away from, right? Like you watch her die. It's pretty.
It's a lot to take in.
And sorry, go ahead, Jill.
I feel like with this show, very, very different shows, but it's the Devilman Crybaby effect of, am I enjoying it? That might not be the word I would use, but I guess I'm satisfied.
It compels.
Yeah. Well, the thing I would say with To Your Eternity is that it knows how to dose its drama. Like, this was a very dramatic episode, but you'll see that, like, this arc also had many, like, funny moments, character building moments, world building moments. So
it's not all just pure misery, for sure.
Right,
but...
like, that's the thing, like, when people talk about when the show was announced, they were like, oh, people are gonna be so devastated, they're gonna cry, and I'm like, that is not necessarily the essence of this show to me. Like, obviously it is a show about death and survival, but, like, it is a show in which the specter of death looms around every corner, because that's what it is when you tell a story about being immortal. But it's about more than that. It's also a show about life and humanity and everything that comes with it. So
I think Aqua nails it there, where, like, the reason I think that To Your Eternity often gets this reputation, like, very tragic, devastating show, is because, like, it is in fact a piece of fiction that is willing to engage with, like, life and death, right? Like, the full spectrum of the lived human experience. And it's just that the death sticks out more to us because that is not nearly as well examined in most anime, right? That's not to say anime characters do not die all the time in anime, but they are not usually given the degree of introspection that...
Right, yeah, and usually, I mean, we're used to getting happy endings most of the time, too.
And in the rare case that a child dies in an anime, it's like in key shows when, like, she withers away of her terminal disease while being hugged by her parents, and this is just like, no, she just got murdered by vile, evil, shitty colonizers.
So, Jill, now that we're at this point, now I can begin to explain to you that To Your Eternity's real subtitle is Hayase Ruins Everything.
Right. I was holding it back so much when you were like, oh man, I hope they don't redeem Hayase. And I'm like, oh man, you've no idea how much Hayase is just the worst forever.
Yeah.
But also,
I have to
Hayase
say,
is like one of the like fundamental intrinsic DNA of the
Dio
entire...
Brando of To Your Eternity.
Yeah, honestly, not even joking.
I
Yes.
I have to say the emotional roller coaster of going from March dying to her getting smacked by a giant bear.
Right.
The low to high on that was pretty pretty exhilarating.
Get your whiplash,
but
yeah. Man.
I'm assuming she's we see her at the end of the whatever's going on.
Yeah, she's still there, And as Perona angrily muttered, she missed her shot there, just yet another horrifying, crippling wound for our friend Hayase. But no, she's not dead yet.
Well,
oh boy.
Perhaps that makes me sadder than anything with this show, but.
But it's I'm curious Jill, where do you think it's going to go from here, right? Because I think now the show has clearly communicated its intent to kind of follow a sort of like interconnected arc structure, like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen big picture.
Like, I mean, I think the structure is clear from the first episode, and this, like, it's going to be, it's a new arc. Fushi beats someone new. That person
right,
dies.
It's going to be a
Fushi
couple
powers
episodes
up.
with
like,
right. And I mean, he's according to the previews, he's going to hang out with the old lady next to who's probably not going to be around that long. So, I guess my only question is, I'm wondering how far in time are we going to go? Because again, I'm intentionally avoiding any information.
I won't say a single goddamn thing. I will just say that the tone of conversation I take about To Your Eternity could be considered somewhat similar to the tone of conversation I take when I talk about later chapters of The Promised Neverland. And I will leave it at that.
Okay.
That's harsh. That's very harsh.
I'm not a big fan of the recent... I mean, they're interesting, but
The anime will not get that far.
I know it won't. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So, I'm intentionally trying to avoid any other information, can stay blind on it. So that's kind of my big question is, are we going to stay in this like kind of general time period? Are we going to skip further ahead in the future? What's going to happen?
Who knows? Vivy jumps forward 40 years in one episode.
Yeah, this is exactly. I mean, this format could jump, 100 years in the future. And
our two shows about sad immortals. One is a pop singing robot, and the other is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Furry. Hey, be happy. Next time, Fushi's finally gonna learn how to talk.
Hooray!
He's getting there.
Now he can express how sad he is.
Reminds me of like Yakimaru and Dororo. Like,
so
long.
we talked about the show bordering on misery porn. And I feel like they got real close when they were like torturing him or whatever, and like he starts saying, what does he say?
Oh, it hurts.
Yes.
It hurts.
It just says that over and over again for like days.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, we're getting close to the misery porn border here, but
it's only knows how to say two things. Is that right? He's just gonna repeat it over and over.
Yeah. All right,
man.
All right, you guys got to fill me in on Godzilla Singular Point.
Right.
I heard a lot of talk about Jet Jaguar.
Has powered up. He has been equipped with the Spear of Anguirus.
Sure, Dude, we can't even start there yet. We have to start at the beginning of the humble origins of Hero of the People, Jet Jaguar.
Well, he appeared earlier,
Jet
right?
Jaguar defended children from Rodan.
Jet Jaguar beat Rodan. Jet Jaguar beat Anguirus. Jet Jaguar's coming for Godzilla next.
Hell yeah.
So,
oh boy.
Godzilla Singular Point continues to be extremely good. They continue to do a pretty good job of balancing these sort of like techno-babble like science horror of like the people coming to the realizations of like what the kaiju kind of mean for their universe.
Yep.
And then these sort of grounded like conspiracy UFO jerks building this fucking combat robot in their garage to fight the kaiju. And both halves work extremely well for me.
Right. There's the like persistent plot line that more and more kaiju are showing up, and it's causing more and more problems globally, and scientists are scrambling to figure out how the kaiju showing up is affecting Earth. Like, what is this strange material that they're shedding? What are we going to do about this?
Right. And they eventually do sort of confirm that the red material, which they call archetype, is sort of a like pseudo dimension terraforming particle that like basically turns whatever dimension it inhibits into more like its own native dimension where the kaiju come from. So like the mystery of why the Rodan swarms were dying off so quickly early on in the show is that like
wasn't enough red dust.
Right. It was basically like throwing a fish on land, right? But by more and more Rodans dying and decomposing into the red dust and like propagating throughout their world, it is slowly making their dimension more habitable to larger, more dangerous kaiju. And we have this whole time, like, they have sort of been slowly following this one big kaiju who has never really been shown in full, and except for the fact that it was very explicitly not Godzilla, at least initially.
Right.
Until we begin to start coming to the understanding that, this red dust archetype can also serve as like an evolutionary catalyst.
Right, because it's like a 4-dimensional material and goes through time, so it can speed up evolution and such.
And so we begin to come to the horrifying realization that, this kaiju that has kind of been shown in a few shots here and there, kind of looks fishy, kind of looks like a
sea serpent,
dumb fish lizard, sea serpent thing, is actually slowly becoming Godzilla.
Oh,
and
nice.
It's a pretty fun, slow reveal. It's a slow burn reveal that I think is done very well. The last episode sort of ends on it sort of retreating into the red dust that has now become so dense that people cannot even see into it anymore. But you just see a couple of tail spines here and there, and you're like, oh yeah, dog, that's a Godzilla.
Meanwhile, to the King of Monsters,
Anguirus is just putzing around the forest, and so the local Hunters Association thinks this is a great PR opportunity to take down this new monster, and the mayor will get so many awards, and the local Hunters Association will have a great party. We'll set up some picnic tables, invite the media.
Flying all kinds of flags on this one of what's going to happen.
And the really great thing about this, is that what Godzilla Singular Point has done so well is perfectly capture like both the high and low end of what mankind's reaction would be to an otherworldly force that we have no like way of understanding.
Right.
Like, on one end, you have the scientists being like, "What the fuck is this, and what does it mean?" And on the low level, you have grifters going like, "How can I make money off this?"
Right.
And it's like clearly set up as like just the most like fucking shittiest like small town mayor power, power move or whatever. And so of course as a PR thing, they've invited Jet Jaguar over as sort of a PR thing, because Jet Jaguar is already 1-0 on kaiju. So clearly we should. Yeah, the people's hero.
The people's hero who has legs destroyed by Rodan and now is attached to some shitty wheels.
Yes. Jet Jaguar Mark II is wheel-based this time around. And spoilers, Anguirus attacks, fucks everybody up. Even the military on their jeeps with 50 cals can't do anything to Anguirus. But you know who can stop Anguirus? Jet Jaguar with a harpoon gun.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Just fucking get point blank and blast Anguirus in the
right
head.
because the reason gunfire doesn't work on Anguirus is that like because it is an archetype based creature, it like just subconsciously has like slight
future knowledge,
foresight abilities. Yeah, like it can see just enough into the future to like see what's attacking it, and like its spines are like bulletproof, and so it's like reflecting the bullets. It's like calculating the trajectory and reflecting the bullets back. And so Jet Jaguar and its pilots, of course, arrive at the conclusion: you might be able to predict the trajectory of bullets, but what if it's point blank right in your fucking face, you damn kaiju? So they just fucking shove this harpoon gun right into its goddamn face, pulls the trigger, blasts that thing. It's fantastic. In a ways, Godzilla Singular Point might actually be a legitimate challenger to the throne for best mecha anime of the season.
So, is the Jet Jaguar and I'm assuming the Jet Jaguar team, are they being painted as the heroes of this story, or are they still being kind of set up to fail?
Both. Like, their hearts are clearly in the right places, and one of them is a legitimate super genius. Like one member of the team is like this, like, programming science prodigy who, like, developed the like super AI that some of the characters use in that show.
But they're still gonna get their ass beat by Godzilla,
just these
right?
like dudes in a garage, right? Kinda like they're still
right, and
small
so
scale compared to the girl.
And it is that groundedness that kind of makes the escalation of Jet Jaguar so exciting, because like after the Anguirus episode, in the latest episode, they have finished upgrading Jet Jaguar to Jet Jaguar Mark III, who now has actual legs he can walk on. And yes, they harvested, like fucking Monster Hunter,
I was gonna say,
a piece of Anguirus and mounted it onto a pole to turn it into a spear. We have gone full Evangelion Lance of Longinus here. Like
the Lance of Anguirus.
Jet Jaguar is hungry for kaiju blood. We are going full fucking Doom Eternal. The only thing the kaiju have to fear is you, Jet Jaguar. Jet Jaguar, the fucking one-man kaiju genocide, is coming for Godzilla. And like,
we spray painted this fucking horn and put it on a big pole, and we are coming for Godzilla, motherfucker.
Uploaded. Oh, also another anime in which a robot has a combat protocol. They have uploaded their spear combat kaiju killing protocol into Jet Jaguar Mark III, and I am so fucking
around, I'm sure.
I am so fucking excited. Like, look, I love Dynazenon. I was super excited at the end of like last week's episode's cliffhanger, but Jet Jaguar fucking striding out of the garage, fucking spear in hand, is actually maybe the most excited I have ever been for a mega anime.
Well,
I feel like I gotta catch up with that at some point.
And you have this shitty old man saying the time has come to eradicate Godzilla.
With his fucking like 1 story tall Jet Jaguar. It's like I'm like.
Oh yeah, because he's not even like that big, right?
No, he's not even that big. He's like a story tall.
Yeah.
But I'm like positively giddy because like of course Jet Jaguar is not actually going to fight Godzilla and win, but because they've made it a clear point that Jet Jaguar has consistently been the actual most effective response to the kaiju so far that like I am so ready for just the fucking next episode or whatever when Jet Jaguar is just Doom Guy style, like fucking posing on top of a mountain of kaiju corpses, just cutting down Rodans left and right with its fucking Anguirus spear.
Then we can sew the Rodan hides into some more armor.
Exactly.
Make some Rodan armor, right?
Oh shit!
What's the set bonus for that one?
God.
Knowing Monster Hunter, wouldn't that be like the worst armor in the game except for the starting
armor? It would be,
armor?
yes. It would probably be like a very early game starter armor, but
right.
Oh man.
It's
all right.
It's what a weird show.
This is just so funny to me.
It's so good.
Let's wrap things up with Dynazenon.
Also really good.
Also really good.
Oh man.
Also really fucking good.
Like we all had expectations for this show, but I feel like at least for me, it has exceeded expectations. Like
right.
Dude. Like
so, in an effort to try to keep this somewhat concise, I wanted to talk about first of all like the character work.
Yeah, it's just
top
great
notch
across the board.
Just because the thing is, I was incredibly worried when Auntie showed up at the end of episode. What is it? Episode 6.
Oh, I don't know. I was super
No, wait.
hyped,
I was worried because I was gonna be like, oh no, they're gonna do like weird like arc welding stuff, trying to tie this into the original Gridman and how it relates to Gridman ending and stuff like that. But
then
in the latest episode, they basically acknowledge that Auntie is like, yeah, I'm like a dimension hopping kaiju cop, like. And, like, they pretty much established that this is another world, but Auntie is here because he, like, hops between dimensions, and it's just a fun little cameo, and then everything else is just, continues to be about the things Dynazenon is good at, namely character stuff. Yeah. And also cool robot fights, but also character stuff.
Yeah,
so,
I think...
I was pleasantly surprised by that.
I think, there's a couple things that stood out to me, like when they have their fight and everyone is too sad to fight.
Too sad to pilot this robot.
They did such a good job building up to that moment.
Right. Galma's like, what's with you guys? And everybody's
so, like,
nothing.
They didn't have to say anything. Like, you just knew.
Yes.
what was going on, because they did the groundwork beforehand to build up where everyone's state of mind is, right? And it made sense that, being in a life and death fight piloting a giant robot has been like the last thing on their mind up to now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was very good, and I really loved the latest episode.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good one.
I really appreciated how there was no big declaration of friendship or anything like that you would get in our show. It's just that everyone had time to cool down and hang out for a bit, and
I really
chill.
Yeah, sorry.
Go.
Yeah, I really liked just if we're talking about the last 3 episodes in aggregate, I think that the individual arcs of Yume and Yomogi kind of investigating the nature of Kano's passing, Koyomi kind of coming to terms with his past in a lot of ways. I think they were all concluded in the latest episode in a really strong and, as you said, relatively subtle way, right? Like when Yomogi hears Yume kind of she's kind of working through the nature of Kano's death, because she's watching these videos and she's I can't tell, was she bullied until she committed suicide, or was this actual genuine teasing? And I can't tell, and it makes me worried, right?
I'm pretty I'm keeping open the possibility that we will not get closure about Kano's death. That it is just, sometimes strange and inexplicable things happen. That's what grief is, and you have to live with that for the rest of your life. So I'm definitely keeping that a possibility.
And I think that, Yomogi's response to it, which is just to cry, is actually, I think it's actually a really smart choice, because I think a lesser anime would have had Yomogi stand up and be
no, I really care.
Yume, I'm here to give a speech, right? Like Lena, Lena from 86. I really do care, and you're gonna tell because of the sincerity of my words. And instead, no, he hears the sheer tragedy
is not
of
capable of
right. He is not verbose enough to do that. So he's just oh my god, that's the saddest shit I ever heard, and he cries. It's there you go. That's how he shows how sincere his sincerity and his desire to help Yume. Legitimately because he sees her as a friend and not just because she's a cute girl, right?
That's the thing. There's so many good relationships between these characters. We have 2 boy and girl pairings. We have Yomogi and Yume, and we have Koyomi and Chisei, and both of them are just good friends who hang out and care about each other and do stuff together without any of the dumb, horny anime bullshit that implies that boys and girls can get along without there being some sort of sexual ulterior motive. We know Yomogi fancies Yume, but he's still genuinely nice to her and cares about her.
Right. If he was just physically attracted to her, he wouldn't have broken down crying in that scene, right?
But, he would.
I just love in this episode too, just I don't know, maybe it's just me, but explicit and positive depictions of human empathy.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally. I mean,
and maybe we had human empathy, depending on what Gauma is.
Gauma and Koyomi on the couches or whatever, just being yeah, man,
it's really good, right?
Good
because
job, dude.
Yeah, right, Koyomi just being
good going.
Yeah, speaking of Koyomi stuff, it hasn't gotten as much screen time, but I'm actually really appreciative of kind of what the direction. Not only appreciative, but I'm also curious where the direction of his arc continues to go, because he kind of has this big moment in 7 where he finds what's her name? Right, the husband, and he's I could just leave this motherfucker to die, but obviously I'm not going to actually do that, right? And it's Gauma basically being doing the right thing even when you hate it is that is the surest sign that you're a cool dude, basically.
Also, how weird is it that it is sort of exceptional that we have the situation in which our neat main character has an old flame, but she's married and her husband is not an abusive asshole.
Right, because I mean that almost lends.
Yeah.
Right, and that kind of makes Koyomi's coping with it honestly feel a bit more relatable, right? When he's drunkenly rambling, she led me on and all that stuff.
What did she say about oh, should I have gotten married when he's just like a totally normal, fine guy, and all that.
Right, and it's like it makes his cope feel more relatable because like, yeah, it's like, all right, man, I get it, right? It's like it's just sometimes shit happens, and but the thing I guess I'm more curious with Koyomi is those like we still have the implication of like the flashback, right? Like I'm still not 100% Inamoto, that's her name. I'm not 100% sold that Inamoto is a normal person,
right?
Because like the way her flashbacks are framed, it's like
she still has half bleached hair, also.
I mean, like, it may also be like a Flowers of Evil thing where it's like, oh yeah, I was so fucked up in middle school, and it totally like messed him up, and then they reunited, and it turns out that she turned out completely fine.
Right. Just like, oh, for her that was a phase that lasted like 2 years, and for him it scarred him for life or something.
Yeah.
Like I think there's definitely like some interesting potential there. The thing I actually think is also interesting is like what this is doing to Koyomi and Chisei's relationship, right? Because Chisei clearly emulates Koyomi, right?
Right, she looks up to him.
Right. Like you see that with like when he bites the lollipop, she does it too, right? She likes to adopt his mannerisms. And I think there's actually a little bit of discomfort in her because she's beginning to see Koyomi become more proactive, right? Like when he fucking umbrella smashes that window to get back his car, like you can almost see a little bit of discomfort in Chisei of like, this is not the Koyomi that I'm like comfortable with, right?
Even though he is like by all means becoming a better person,
right? He's becoming a better person. Like, but I think the implication is that Chisei doesn't want to become a better person.
She wants him to be like the neat life goals.
If he's a neat,
like,
he's a neat, then she can be neat too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because she uses him to project her own doubts. Like,
and clearly,
he can be at home from school. He cannot do anything, so I can do that too. Like,
right, and so it's like, I'm really curious where that relationship is going because she keeps pulling that pearl out, and we see it's growing. Right, and we know from Gridman that kaiju grow from negative emotions. So like,
yeah,
something's going on there.
Yeah,
like,
something's gonna go down.
And so I think it's like. Episode 7 definitely has a lot of really satisfying conclusions to character arcs, but it also makes it clear that, like, they've overcome an obstacle on the road, but, like, these people have not arrived at their destination yet. Like, there is still work to be done. And also, like, you know, for a show we talk about where the animation is clearly trying to emulate, like, Toku choreography, find me a fucking Toku actor who can do the combo move of Dynazenon rapid punching that kaiju into the air, and then Grid Knight springboarding off of Dynazenon and fucking drop kicking that fucking kaiju mid-air. God damn, some good choreography.
Let's talk about let's get into some meta plot and conspiracy theory stuff here. Obviously, at the end of was it episode 6, we had the cliffhanger with Grid Knight showing up, which has been our biggest callback to the original SSSS Gridman so far. I had to look up. I had to look it up just to make sure, is that actually Grid Knight?
Yeah.
Or is it just something that looks like Grid Knight? And it's like, no, that's Grid Knight. Which was pretty cool.
I mean, when he showed up, like, immediately this, like, uncovered old memories, like, oh yeah, right, that dude was in that show. Like, I had completely forgotten about
which
the
I think
existence
which I think is a fantastic choice to, like...
I think it's a way better choice than Gridman.
Right, like, I don't want to see Gridman in the series, but throwing Grid Knight, all right, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting twist.
You know, there's some interesting, like, you know, they've clearly grown up, right? Like, Auntie's looking a little older. The kaiju girl is got an entirely different look going on.
She now looks like what's-her-face from the Idol Master.
You know, some fun callbacks there. They played 2 tracks from the Gridman soundtrack, which was fun. And yeah, I just think that as a connection, like, I think if you're going to have your connection to the original series, I think Auntie is a great choice because, like, he is a legacy character, but also he is also the type of character who is not going to just, like, explain things to you. Like, he is enough of a stubborn dickhead that he's just going to like show me, like, yeah, you wonder why I'm here. Well, too bad, I'm not telling you.
So do you think they're in it for the long run, or are they just here to be a cute cameo?
I think they're in the opening now, so I think they will reappear.
Yeah.
Reappear sporadically, I think. Like, I think the implication is, like, well, Auntie is clearly busy fucking doing his own thing, and so, like, you know, Dynazenon is still on the job for fighting off the kaiju.
They'll show up to kick the kaiju in the face when Dynazenon gets in trouble, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm done.
Okay. All right. Here's my theory I'll throw out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if this is that wild of a theory, but what are the odds that Akane made Dynazenon and gave it to Galma?
Pretty high.
I think it's pretty high. Yes. Like, even though Galma's like, it's been 5,000 years or something.
But if it's been Tron time, then
right. If they're in cyberspace, like. Like,
so,
is that Akane's way of like trying to make good on what she's done? Is like, I'm never going back to the digital world again. Like, I need to face reality.
We'll give it a savior.
Bro, yeah, I will give it a savior in the form of this bandaged, pink-haired mummy freak
with this sick robot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she probably made it, right? Like, that's the.
Yeah.
So then how do the kaiju eugenicists factor into all of that?
Right, and the question is, remember, episode 1, you see a pair of hands dropping the kaiju pearls into the world. So, like, there is an arc villain to this story. We just haven't met them, potentially, yet. Yeah. Like...
I mean, if Akane could have been manipulating the world previously, I mean, could somebody else be manipulating the world? But...
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
What if it turns out it was Shisei all along?
Yeah. She ends up being the bad guy. I mean, that would not shock me. I wouldn't. I'd say the chances are lower than higher on that, but it would not shock me.
I would find that a disappointing reveal because you're just copying the Gridman formula of damaged female character with baggage is the villain. And it's like all right, we did that once, and it worked well in Gridman, but I don't think you could do it twice.
Right.
I think they would have implied that a lot sooner.
Yeah.
And I think for the same reason, Kano is also off the suspects list.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think that's the fun of Dynazenon, right? Is like we were so like, we were concerned that Dynazenon was going to end up being a very predictable like follow up to Gridman.
Yeah.
But Dynazenon has done so much good work to kind of forge its own path and forge its own mystery that I think that it speaks to the fact that we can still like sit here and like idly speculate about Dynazenon's direction, and none of us really has a very strong theory or a very confident theory.
Well, then again, I'm very glad that this is a show that does seem to focus more on the atmosphere, on the characters and how they interact with each other, on the human side rather than maybe, perhaps for my tastes, Gridman got a bit too bloated by like weird meta plot and cyberspace stuff. That I get the feeling that this show is a bit more grounded and that works in its favor.
Well,
I could definitely see that. Like
we talked about last time, just having the ensemble cast,
right?
And with a not even just an ensemble cast, but I guess a wider variety of types of characters. Whereas the
Gridman was very it's two guys and a girl, like every Beck thing ever.
Right.
Like they looked at what worked. You know, they saw there's the like Rika Akane stuff. Let's bring that to the forefront. Let's like bring the four. What was their name? Like the weapon dudes,
right. The Neon
Genesis. Right. Let's convert them into a single character. So they're definitely playing to the original strength.
I do kind of miss because overall I think I'm enjoying Dynazenon more than Gridman. I do miss Akane as a villain though. She was a great villain.
I think if there's like any
the kaiju eugenicists are not filling that void.
Yeah, I think if anything makes or breaks Dynazenon, it's going to be like kind of when the other shoe drops and they kind of reveal the true shape of this plot, right? Because the thing that made Gridman work so well, right, is that we had so much time with Akane, right? Like we knew she was the villain, and it was fascinating to kind of watch her go through those motions.
Yeah.
But we don't really have that here, and so like, what will be the like true emotional core of Dynazenon at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like.
That's the thing, because Akane was also a very grounded villain. Like, she was like, life sucks, everyone sucks, let's just destroy the world. And whereas the kaiju eugenicists are more like classic villains who have, like, a higher calling. And in that way, they also they also become more morally gray, I guess, but it doesn't sort of have the burdens them with the risk of their higher motive has to pay off, whereas Akane just has the charisma as a villain to just be enjoyable as a villain, whereas the eugenicists are a mystery, so their enjoyability depends on how that mystery is resolved.
I mean, in ways, is like the thing with the eugenicists is like they are kind of more actual cartoon characters, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You got the leader, you got the loud one, the girl, the quiet one, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're not as fully defined as Akane was, like, and I think that's fine for what they are right now, where they do kind of occupy this sort of weird, like, Doronjo gang Team Rocket-esque relationship of just, like...
It works
like,
because...
Eventually...
It works because in Gridman, Akane was basically the main character, and here we have main characters, so the villains don't need to fill that role.
Yeah.
Like,
but it would be nice if eventually we do get to eventually see, like... I don't know, like I guess I'm either waiting for a like true arc villain to be revealed, or I'm waiting for the kaiju eugenicists to like grow into becoming people who are interesting and well defined enough to be like the other half of that emotional equation of that makes these like this Gridman series of anime work so well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if there were any weak point to point out, and I don't even know if it's a weak point, but I do feel like, we need to get something out of that at some point.
to make this dumbass combination of, like, grounded melancholy teen drama and weird Toku robot bullshit that has somehow managed to strike twice, completely gel, like...
Yep. All right. Well, that's going to do it. We only went 15 minutes over, shockingly.
Hey.
So
that's an achievement.
I'll count that as a win.
Pat ourselves on the back.
I'm actually
Everyone
surprised.
gets an honorary medal.
Hey, you want to do the math? We talked about like 33% extra anime this week.
That's true. Yeah,
because of the
we
break
really
we
should have
took.
gone for 2 hours.
Oh,
exactly.
Boy.
Well, let me tell you about the story of Jet Jaguar, savior of mankind.
Yeah, we've got 15 minutes to kill. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode then. Let me go through our usual spiel here. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. Zig is writing about Dynazenon on an episode basis, so you can check out his analysis.
Oh shit! Also, shout-outs. If we're talking about stuff on the blog, to Eero's excellent, very clever review of the Final Heavens Feel anime film.
And the entire Fate franchise at large.
Yes.
Yeah, no, like legitimately, like Eero, like I was saving it till now because I want to put this shit out on the record. I think it's a fantastic review / editorial. Like as a fellow fan of a decade-spanning franchise, like I think it's a super fascinating look at like what it means to be part of a franchise that is literally generational. Like a franchise that has been around so long, you have old heads, like you have people who, or a franchise that is so generational. You have fans who were born like never knowing the face of the original thing, right? Like it's a super interesting kind of look at what that means and what it means to be a fan of that. And I think our friend Eero here knocked it out of the park. So if you're interested in reading about either Type Moon stuff or just fandom in general, I highly recommend it.
Yes.
So, G, when is your comprehensive review of the Gundam franchise coming?
Never happening, because as Eero gets into his own reckoning with what it means to be a fan, my fandom of my unironic fandom of Gundam was stamped out like in 2006. So I have no love left to give.
Yeah. I mean, are you sure, G, you don't want to write a lengthy article about the Gundam Build Fighter series, or?
Oh, I could do it. Don't get it twisted. If I had the time, I could do it. It's just.
Yeah. All right. Yes. So check all that out for sure. Follow us on Twitter at the GLORIO blog. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and you can check us out on YouTube. like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. You know, tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll see everybody next time.
Bye.